Today's video is going to be the no disclaimers book tag. I'm not sure who's the original creator of this video, so if I can find out, I will link them down below, but I'm going to get straight into it. Number one, which book trope annoys you most? If I'm looking down, it's because I've got my notes here. So which book trope annoys me the most? There's actually a couple that I want to mention just quickly here. So the first one is when a character is immediately incredibly strong and incredibly good at fighting with zero training. I'm just talking specifically about physical fighting here, not magical fighting, because I appreciate that with magic, a character may have been subconsciously using that magic throughout their lives and it's just a case of honing those skills that they actually already have. I'm talking specifically about physical fighting, where they've done absolutely no fighting ever before in their lives. They've just picked up a sword or a bow or whatever for the very first time, and they're an incredible warrior, better than people who've been practicing for 20 years. That's just not realistic. That doesn't happen. That can't happen. It's impossible. Fighting is all muscle memory, really. That doesn't just come from nowhere. So that really annoys me because it's just so unrealistic. And I don't need my books to be realistic because I read a lot of fantasy and most of it is incredibly unrealistic, but that still really annoys me. And the second annoying trope, and I don't know if this is necessarily a trope, but I'm going to mention it anyway, it's when cheating is glamorized. So you are supposed to be rooting for this couple even though one or both members of that couple are actually already in another couple. I mean, I don't understand why I'm supposed to get behind that, but I don't. I just don't. Especially dislike it when the person who's being cheated on is made out to be the villain. No. I don't care if that person is awful. Break up with them first. If you want to be with someone else, that's fine, but don't feel like you can still be in a relationship with person A or going off with person B just because person A isn't someone that you get on with anymore or isn't a very nice person. Break up with them then, and then be with person B. Don't just be with person B and have your cake and eat it too and be with person A as well. No. And I don't appreciate that, and I especially don't appreciate it when it's made out to be a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's bad. So that's that. Number two, which writer or writers are overhyped or overrated? And I don't really like this question because reading and writing are so subjective. Everybody has different tastes, everybody likes different things, and so what is not enjoyable to me will be super enjoyable to somebody else, and vice versa. So I don't really want to answer this question, so I'm not going to, which I know is a bit of a cop-out, but I just feel like it's really unfair to criticise an author who's put so much work into a book when really the only problem with it is that it isn't for me. That's my fault, not their fault, that I've read their book and it wasn't right for me. That's nothing against them. That's just my personal feelings about their book. So I'm not gonna answer that question. Number three, what are your least favourite books since you started blogging? And I'm gonna alter this question very slightly because I haven't been making YouTube videos for very long. So I have a very, very small pool of books to choose from. So I'm going to extend that and pick from the books that I've read this year. And I'm going to pick two. So the first is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and number two is The School for Good and Evil, which is by Suman Chenani, I think. I'll write it because I don't think I'm saying that right. I didn't like either of these books, and for different reasons. The School for Good and Evil is a middle grade book that I've mentioned before on this channel, and I don't have an issue with middle grade books in general, but I do find that they need to be written carefully and really well because they are aimed at younger people who are using reading not just for enjoyment but also to develop their vocabulary and their reading and writing skills, so I feel like it's extra specially important that they're written well, and I didn't love the writing in this book. Also, the premise of the book was really, really interesting, but it was just a little bit slow for me. So the premise of the book is these two girls who are whisked off to the school for good and evil, and they end up in the wrong ones, or so they think. And it follows them trying to get home and trying to sort out all the chaos that's going on in their lives by them having been taken to this school and placed in their perception, the wrong school. So the concept behind the books was really, really interesting, but it just didn't deliver for me, and especially in terms of pacing, which is an issue I find with a lot of books. If a book is slow, really, really slow, then I really struggle with it, and this one was just a little bit too slow for me, and the writing wasn't as good as I would have liked it to have been. The second book, Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, was just a little bit too weird for me, and I don't have a problem generally with weird books. Like I've read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, and that is a really weird book, and the So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, and The Restaurant at the Edge of the Universe, or The End of the Universe, or something like that. I've read those two as well, and they're really weird too, but I still liked them. Neverwhere, I don't know, I just kind of felt like it was weird for the sake of being weird, and it was weird without being funny weird. So maybe it was just that the writer's sense of humour and mine don't gel together. I suspect that that's probably the case, but it was just, I really wanted to like it. It's about London above and London below. London above is just normal London, our London, and London below is where all the people that have slipped through the cracks go, and there's lots of crazy stuff that happens down there, which is fine, but I just didn't really get it, and the premise sounded really interesting to me, but I guess it was just a little bit too weird for me, unfortunately, and I consider myself a bit of a weirdo, so it's surprising, but yeah, it just didn't gel very well with my reading preferences, unfortunately. Number 4, a terrible ending that ruined an otherwise quality book. And this one, there's going to be spoilers. So I'm going to put on the screen The Forest of Hands and Teeth, which is the series that I'm going to talk about for this question. And if you haven't read this series, please jump forward until the picture of the book is gone, because I'm going to have to talk about spoilers for this one. So The Forest of Hands and Teeth is a zombie apocalypse book, essentially, series. I think there's 4 books in the series, don't quote me, I'll maybe write it somewhere or something. And I read them a few years ago, and I generally steer clear of anything that could be remotely scary because I'm a massive wimp. But I went through this phase a few years ago where I was loving everything zombie related, so I picked up this series, and it was really, really interesting. I'm not going to say it's super well written or a super novel plot idea. It's not. It's just a standard zombie apocalypse book. Nothing particularly special about it. But I really, really enjoyed it until the end. Again, if you haven't read these books, please jump ahead, because I am going to be discussing the ending of the series. You've been warned. At the end of this book, the characters are trapped in a building. The zombies are coming for them, and that's it. There is no escape. They are going to be turned into zombies. They're desperately trying to find a way out. And my honest opinion is the way this book series should have ended is they should have died. That is the realistic ending to that story. It's sad, you love the characters, so you don't want that to happen, but realistically, that is what should have happened. But no, that is not what happened. What happened instead is they used scraps of cloth and old t-shirts to fashion a hot air balloon and escaped by a hot air balloon made from t-shirts. What? That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. That would never work. I get that this is a zombie apocalypse book, so it's not exactly realistic to begin with, but come on, really? A hot air balloon made out of t-shirts? For starters, that would take days to make, not the few minutes that it took in the book. And for another, that wouldn't be airtight so that it would actually float, and it wouldn't have been made of a material that would actually work anyway. T-shirts are generally made of cotton. That wouldn't work either. So I know it's not meant to be realistic, but that was just taking it a little bit too far, in my opinion, and it ruined what otherwise was a fairly enjoyable book. So yeah, I wish that ending had been different. I wish that ending had been different. Moving on to question number 5, and if you are now back with me because you didn't want to hear spoilers, then I'm afraid I'm going to have to send you away again until I stop holding up Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So if you don't want spoilers for any of the Harry Potter books at all, I'm just holding up this one, but this is just spoilers for Harry Potter in general, so please skip ahead until you don't see this book anymore if you don't want any spoilers. But question number 5 is, which fictional characters do you wish were not killed off? And the reason I'm holding up the Chamber of Secrets is not because of somebody who died in this book, but it's of a character that we were introduced to in this book who dies in the final book. And I'm sure anybody watching who has read this series or watched the films knows who I'm talking about, and that is Dobby. Oh, Dobby. Dobby was one of my favourite characters in Harry Potter, and there was a lot of death in the Deathly Hallows, and I think there did need to be, and it's incredibly sad. And there were a lot of really beloved characters in the Deathly Hallows that died, like Moody and Hedwig and Tonks and Lupin and Fred, and so many characters that we loved and who died. But I think a lot of those, it needed to happen. But Dobby was one character that I just felt like his death was kind of unnecessary. I mean, I understand why he died. I understand why J.K. Rowling killed him off, and I understand why she did it when she did, because Harry hadn't seen any death at that point until Dobby, since Moody, and he needed to understand that the stakes were incredibly high, and it wasn't just him and his friends on an adventure trying to find the Horcruxes. There were real consequences. So I do understand why it happened, but just Dobby. Anyway, yeah, I just wish he didn't die. Number 6. What are some of your bookish pet peeves? I'm going to mention a couple, or 3 actually. Firstly, dog earring books. Why? There are so many pretty bookmarks, and you can get bookmarks for free from most libraries, and you could probably use a post-it or an envelope that you're not using anymore, or a scrap of paper, or a bit of a letter that you're not using. Why is it necessary to dog ear a book? Why? Just use the receipt that you got when you bought the book, even. Why are you dog earing it? Why? I don't understand. If you dog ear your books, explain why down below. I don't get it, and I don't like it. And number 2 kind of follows on from that one, which is either not returning a book you've borrowed from a friend, or returning it in a state other than it looked like when you borrowed it. So the first one of those is by far the most irritating to me. If I loan you a book, I expect it back. I tend to not loan my books out anymore because I've been burnt by this so many times, but I'm not giving you the book. If I was giving you the book, I would buy you your own copy and give it to you and make clear that I was giving it to you. When I loan you a book, it's because I want it back. I'm giving it to you on a temporary basis for you to then give it back to me. That's why it's called loaning, not giving. So there's that. And 2 is when you do eventually give it back to me, don't have food all over it, don't dog ear my pages, don't crack my spine, don't have dropped it in the bath. And if you do ruin my book, buy me a new one. Yeah, I think it's disrespectful. If I have given you a book to enjoy for a period of time that I have enjoyed and I think you will enjoy, then I expect you to give it back to me, 1, and 2, give it back to me in the state that you borrowed it in. So there. And number 3, thing that a bookish pet peeve is spoilers. If you are recommending a book to me, don't tell me the ending of the book. So many times people recommend books and they say, oh, you really need to read this. This happens at the end. Well, now I don't need to read it because I know what happens. If I'm going to read a book, I don't want to know what happens at the end, or at least ask me first. Some people I know like to know what happens at the end of a book because they find it too stressful to get through a book without knowing that. That's fine, but don't just assume that I want to know what the end of the book is before I've read it. No, I don't want spoilers. No. This is number 7, what are some books you feel should have more recognition? A couple of books that I'm going to discuss here are the Black Dagger Brotherhood by J.R. Ward, which I have spoken about on this channel before, so I'm not going to go into any great depth, but essentially it is a romance series with fantastical elements. The overarching plot between all of these books is the Black Dagger Brotherhood, which are a group of vampires who protect the vampire world from the mortal enemy, the Lessers, who are trying to kill all vampires. So that's the overarching plot that goes on throughout all of the books, of which there are around 15. And each book centres on one of the brothers or one of the main characters, and it's their personal love story. And they're just so good. Like, the characters are really deep, there's a lot going on, there's still that fantastical overarching plot which I like, but there's romance. I've mentioned before on this channel, I like romance. I get that not a lot of people do, but I like it, and I personally really like these. So, not spoken about enough, in my opinion. And secondly is the Symphony of Ages by Elizabeth Haydn, which is an epic fantasy series which follows a main protagonist called Rhapsody, who I'm not going to say too much because it's epic fantasy, so again it's really difficult to tell you what it's about without spoilers, and as we've already discussed, we don't like spoilers. Yeah, it follows a girl, she goes on a journey, she has to deal with lots of politics and religion and personal growth and war and an antagonist, and all your general epic fantasy or hallmarks are in there, and I never hear anybody talking about it, and I think it's a really, really good series. So yeah, that one. Number 8 is a deep one, and it's thoughts on censorship and banning books. And I mean, it goes without saying, doesn't it, that this is just ridiculous. Like, books are for everybody. Everybody should be able to read whatever they want. And I know there's this whole thing of, you know, you need to protect children, particularly in schools, from certain types of books, but I don't necessarily agree with that either, because surely if there are books with graphic and problematic content, the place you'd want people to be reading those books is in school, in an environment where they can be taught why that's problematic and why that's not realistic and why that's not a good role model to follow, or whatever it might be. I would have thought that a school would be a good place for somebody to read that kind of book. So censorship, why is it necessary? Just deal with the content that's problematic rather than stopping someone from reading that specific content. And banning books altogether, again, same thing. I don't understand why you would need to do that. I mean, just educate people on why it's problematic, or even better, allow people to form their own opinions. And if it's in the case of younger people, guide them, but again, allow them to form their own opinions. Is that not the point of reading? I don't know. It's a bit of a weird question, really, because I mean, I suppose there must be people who think that censorship and banning books is a good thing, because otherwise it wouldn't happen, but I personally don't understand it at all. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I just can't put myself in the shoes of that person, but I don't get it. I really don't. And number 9 is, who do you tag? You. Anyone watching this who wants to do this tag, please do, and please let me know that you've done it so I can check that video out. But that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more like this from me, then please do think about hitting that subscribe button. I would be so grateful, and I hope to see you again here soon. Thanks. Bye.